Donc Jessica va
So Jessica will moderate the second part. She will tell us about a few issues. And then we will hear Michal KURTYKA, who is online almost in 8 minutes. So we have time to introduce him a bit in 10 minutes. So you can take your 10 minutes. He will wait for us. And then after Michal KURTYKA, we will move Belgium after the lunch break. So Jessica, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Claude. Good morning, everyone.
I understand that Michal KURTYKA will be connecting in 7 minutes, more or less. So just to quickly introduce this session, I mean, the current energy crisis that we're facing today has been bubbling for the last 2 years. This is not something which happened as a result of the current crisis in Ukraine. It has been there for some time, but it is clear that the current situation really has been exacerbated by the war. As part of all of this, there have been questions raised about nuclear and whether some of the decisions that governments have taken are actually the right decisions. But all of this has happened at the same time as this kind of debate around nuclear and its inclusion under the taxonomy. So we've seen in particular over the last 2 years, not just this focus on a growing energy crisis and a taxonomy debate, but also a much broader discussion about nuclear and a much more vocal discussion. And we've seen different stakeholders really starting to come together and defend nuclear. So we're not talking just about industry here. We're talking also about member states. We're talking also about trade unions, so workers. And we're talking also about civil society and a growing number of NGOs. One interesting point I saw in the argumentation used, in particular from the Sustainable Finance Platform, as to why nuclear should not have been included in the Complementary Delegated Act, was that they said, yes, indeed, given the energy crisis, etc., yes, nuclear does ensure security of supply, but security of supply is not a sustainability matter. Let's be very clear. Sustainability is composed of 3 pillars. Environment. And environment is a very important pillar. It's the one that we seem to be focusing on most at the moment. But it's also about economic sustainability and social sustainability. And I want to be very clear here. Access to energy is a fundamental human right. And access to energy is a social matter. And therefore, it is important in the sustainability debate. Today, we have to make the right choices. And those choices need to combine our need to decarbonize as quickly as possible, at the same time ensure that we have enough energy to meet our needs, but also let's make sure that citizens can afford that energy. We seem to be focusing on the moment at very short-term measures. But this is a long-term problem. So yes, we do need those short-term emergency measures, but we also need to start thinking more long-term. How can we prevent this from ever happening again in the future? The EU sets the policy, and as Jan mentioned earlier, the member states are still free to decide on their own energy mix. But that decision has to be linked and has to be in line with the goals that the EU is setting. As part of this session, we're going to be looking at the perspectives of the different EU countries. Today, there are some member states that are rethinking their phase-out plans. Belgium, we will have a speaker from Belgium in this session. But also Germany. Questions seem to be, do we really want to take our two remaining reactors offline at the end of this year, or do we need to rethink this? There are other countries that are looking, as mentioned earlier, at how the current crisis is affecting their nuclear sector. Some are indeed dependent on Russian fuel and Russian technologies. And whilst there are no sanctions in place today, companies and countries are still looking to see what can be done to ensure that they don't have problems in having the supplies that they need. There are also those member states that are looking to reinvigorate their nuclear fleet. and France is a clear example of that. And some countries, albeit for some time, have been looking to see, well, should we not be considering, or should we not be looking to see how to build a nuclear power plant? So newcomer countries such as Poland. There's one additional point that I wanted to make today, and it relates in a way to the taxonomy. It's some good news that we saw coming from the European Parliament this morning, and again is showing how the tide really is turning and how there is much more positive vision for nuclear in the future. The Industry Committee in the European Parliament was discussing the Repower EU. And Repower EU, there are links to, for example, the Recovery and Resilience Fund and other European funds. So how can we make money available to help us move away from our dependence on Russian energy? An amendment was passed, albeit in the Industry Committee. It still needs to go to plenary. But that amendment basically says that those funds can be used and should be used also for nuclear. So not just for renewables, but also for nuclear. And I show this as another example of how even within the European Parliament, we are seeing this change, and we are seeing this recognition that we need to move away from past ideologies and focus on really what is going to get us where we want to be. Decarbonize with the energy we need and at an affordable price. So with that, I would now like to invite our speaker, Michal KURTYKA, who I hope is connected. Michal KURTYKA, as you know, is the former Minister for Climate and Environment and the former president of COP24 from Poland. Mr. KURTYKA, the floor is yours, if you are connected, hopefully. He's not connected.
I received the information via Twitter, but...
So the Recovery and Resilience Fund, for example, was set up as part of the COVID measures. And as part of that, there was a link to the taxonomy. So all of this shows the importance of the decision to include nuclear under the taxonomy.
No, the vote that Jessica was referring to was this morning in committee ITRE, European Parliament, and there were 32 votes in favor of inclusion of nuclear in the Repower EU scheme, 23 votes down, and 3 abstentions. But as Jessica was saying, it's now it has to go to plenary, so it's not a done deal, I would say, but it's a good signal, I would say. That's.
Yeah. And it shows also the effects that the debate on the taxonomy has had, because we had been mentioning this already as a risk. A lot of EU funds in the future were going to be linked to taxonomy compliance, so really providing funds to those sectors that are under the taxonomy. The Recovery and the Resilience Fund, it was noted in there that they needed to meet the do no significant harm criteria. So this shows a potential positive development that we will no longer be seeing these funds with automatic exclusions to nuclear power plants, but we will start seeing these funds automatically including nuclear power plants. And again, this shows this really positive trend that has been developing over the last 2 years, and it shows just how many supporters are actually out there. And maybe one other point, whilst we're waiting for Mr. KURTYKA to connect, one other point to raise here is we've been looking at, as part of the Complementary Delegated Act process, there is a possibility for NGOs to request an internal review. So they can't go in front of the European Court of Justice, but they can go to the Commission to request this internal view. Greenpeace, as usual, has submitted their document, and their document really focuses on criticising the inclusion of nuclear under the taxonomy. But what is really interesting is there's a group of other NGOs who have also submitted a similar request. That group includes WWF, who up until now have been very much anti-nuclear. But I've received the confirmation that that request for an internal view only tackles gas. So it shows that even amongst the NGO community, there is a reflection today whether their position against nuclear is still a realistic one. And I think that is a very positive development. And it opens the door for us to be able to have a conversation with them. Because we shouldn't be fighting at this from two sides. As mentioned earlier, we should all be coming to the table and we should all be discussing potential solutions to the problems that we're facing today and those solutions that are going to get us where we want to be in 2050. Is Mr. KURTYKA connected? So I understand that he has now connected, so I would like to invite Mr. KURTYKA to please take the floor.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I will represent him, yes. So Michal KURTYKA, who is the former Minister for Climate and Environment and the former President of COP24 from Poland. And apparently he's been a friend of Les Entretiens Européens for over 20 years. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. We could add on things like that, but the most important is that I'm very grateful to Claude and Philippe for doing everything that they are doing. And so I couldn't not to take part in this discussion, even if, as you can see, I'm in Berlin trying to convince our German friends. I don't know whether you can see it, but I'm in a Sphere restaurant turning in Berlin right now, preparing for a lunch. And we will be debating about energy transition and climate-related topics here for Germany. And there could not have been a more timely debate on nuclear in Germany than right now. And then could have not been a better moment for what you are doing, Claude, for what you did, Philippe, for Europe and for European industries, and especially for nuclear industries, than this day, this moment today. So first of all, my gratitude, my thanks, and my friendship goes to Claude. So right now, if you allow, I'll be very brief, and I think that you already dealt with the subject extensively. But the problem that we are facing after Russian aggression on Ukraine is not only anymore a problem for Europe in terms of climate strategy, which by some has been seen as ecological phantasmagoria, but interestingly, it has become also a matter of security. When we said that we cut ourselves from Russian hydrocarbons, from gas, oil, and coal, we implicitly must also tackle the question is, how are we going in Europe to secure our future in terms of energy? And I think, and in a manner, I hope that that what happened on the 24th of February, apart all horrible aspects that it has, it will also guide us to say, okay, let's move on and let's forget 19th and 20th century energies that we extensively used and abused, and let's move to new 21st century's energy. And in this regard, I think that nuclear has to play a dominant role. And when I'm saying that it might be a 21st century energy, of course, it takes its roots earlier on. But I think that after Fukushima, in a very unjust manner, it took a hit. And right now, we should do everything possible in order to support the renaissance of nuclear. And why so? First of all, because there is no other source of energy which can fuel our civilization, which can bring competitiveness, jobs, technological advancement, security, and resilience to external shocks than nuclear for Europe. Secondly, because it marries well the problems between energy security and climate concerns. And thirdly, because we still have technological know-how in Europe, And France is a predominant example of this, unluckily not anymore Germany, but we can rebuild European industries out of what EDF used to be, Framatome, Areva. We can rebuild supply chains among biggest European countries. We can again engage in a massive, large-scale reconstruction of nuclear power plants in Europe. Of course, the biggest markets like Polish market, like French market should be playing the role of locomotives. And Poland's ambitions to build 6 nuclear reactors by 2043, starting the first operational in 2033. France also announced its plans for going for the next 6 nuclear reactors. And of course, we have our friends in Czech Republic who are advancing extremely well. We have friends in Finland who are advancing also on a new project. We have all across Europe this call to rethink nuclear role. And in a very interesting and timely manner for my German trip, there was also a call by a young climate activist, Greta Thunberg, calling in Germany for not closing its nuclear power plants, taking into account that every month of not closing nuclear fleet in Germany here saves Europe 1 billion cubic meters of gas. And the economies for not closing in 2023 nuclear power plants in Germany amount to hundreds, more than 100 billion euro already. So we have all good reasons. And I have been in Munich, I have been in Bavaria, I've spoken with CSU's politicians, I spoke here in Berlin with my counterparts. And there is, I think, a very interesting moment. And questions are being asked in Germany, questions long forgotten about whether yes or not nuclear should be part of energy mix. And all this makes me hoping that as Europeans, we will be able to create a coherent renaissance strategy for nuclear industry. And Confrontation, Claude Fischer and Philippe Herzog played a prominent role in reminding us that, this message and in bringing to the table in Europe very practical, concrete solutions. Because right now it will be in practical solutions about regulation, about value chain, about treatment of fuel for Europe that we need to address and that we need to make sure that are at the table. So thank you very much, and I will not be longer. I'm very happy to be with you, and I keep my fingers crossed for the conference.
Thank you very much, Mr. KURTYKA. I'm not sure if you're still connected or you have time for one question. Possibly not. Okay. I think that means we can all head to lunch, which is the news. But maybe back at 1:45 to continue? Perfect. So if we can meet back here in 45 minutes, that would be great. Thank you.